That's a little bit different, though, and I think it's going to be seen as a little bit different by most admissions committees.
Ask the Dean, episode 30, with my friend Dr. Scott Wright.
Hello, hello, ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho. Love the Santa hat. And Rachel Grubbs, how are you?
I'm well.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here to rock and roll on this momentous day where we had lots of momentum to get here. We rolled out lots of new features in MAP today. Some really big updates, some small updates, and some really big ones. You want to talk about those?
Yeah. So I think the one that our viewers are gonna think the coolest is mobile responsiveness. So we know, because we've been watching, that you guys are already logging in from your phones and tablets, but we also know that hasn't been giving you the very best experience. Some things work, some things get smushed. I think smushed is the technical term for when the tables are just like, I guess podcast listeners will just have to picture my hand gestures.
Yep.
But so as of the release that we did just an hour or so ago, mobile responsiveness is up. So now any size device, you're going to be fine using Mapped. We did, of course, road test it before we pushed it live. But if you guys see any issues, let us know. I think somebody just asked a question about a homepage image, so we'll get that for you so that you can save it on your home browsers on your phones.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a cosmetic thing. If you see anything else, squishy smush, see, they agree. So that's the really big, exciting one, I think, for you. Hopefully also for you, maybe more in January when you're back at school, is we have now set up advisor access. So for those of you that are working with school advisors, you can now invite your advisor to join MAPT. We've made the advisor access at no cost to them. So, if they ask you, am I going to have to pay or something? The answer is no. And it's only at your invitation, right? So they're not going to automatically see the data. We're definitely protecting your privacy. You guys signed up for these accounts. But if you choose to share your data with an advisor, what we hope it will do is make the experience of having a meeting with that advisor a lot more productive. Because from kind of what I've heard, you end up spending a lot of the time in the sessions talking about, here's what I've done so far. But now Mapped can quickly visually bring your advisor up to speed on all of that, so you guys can get right into the what's next, what's our plan.
Yeah. I shared my screen here real quick so we could actually show students. So this is a mobile responsiveness. So this is just my browser that we're showing here. This is the dashboard now in a mobile responsive Mapped, and so you can see all of the graphs and everything looks good. We still have some tweaks, obviously. This is still a very young product. The menu now here hidden off on the side under the hamburger menu. Everything that you could do before on the desktop, you can do on a mobile device. So
that's awesome.
Lots of fun stuff here.
Yeah,
so
that's really great.
Can come in here. So as
perfect.
You're on the fly, you're leaving your shadowing experience or whatever, you can come in here and add a new experience state for everything that you're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I did want to show, I'll switch just because we don't have to show it on a mobile device. I do want to switch to showing what the advisor looks like. So you do have a new tab called Advisors. And right now it is literally just Advisors. We will open it up in the future to kind of anyone who you want to invite. But we will go from here. We're starting at Advisors. You want to invite your advisor, and you literally just send you put in your advisor email, and they will get an email saying, hey, Johnny Smith has invited you to access their Mapped account, and they will go through a setup process. We'll approve them to be an advisor, and then they will be able to view your account as a read-only account. So they'll see everything that you see here, but it'll be read-only for them.
Excellent.
Scott, talk about, you're a former director of admissions at a medical school, and you ran a pre-health office for a while. Talk about what this feature potentially would help you with.
Yeah, I mean, it's just as you described. It's the ability for an advisor pre the advising session to go into your account and look things over and see what does your GPA look like? What are the details of your activities? Everything that's in there, even your medical school list, and really update themselves on what you've been doing and where you are in the process. And I think it just jumpstarts the session that you're going to have with them, so that you don't have to talk to them about, well, I made a C in this class, or I did straight A's last semester, or I just did a stint as a scribe for some number of months or whatever. And I think it just enriches the relationship between you and your advisor, so that the advisor is up to date and has a sense of where things stand for you. So I think it's a real plus for the advisor and you as well in terms of time saving and information that the advisor can use to really explore some of the more nuances of the process with you, instead of having to ask, well, what did you do? It's really a game changer in terms of the so what. This is presenting to the advisor the what. So now the advisor can quickly jump to the so what parts of the conversation before in the past, where they may have taken half your session getting all the what stuff taken care of. So this is really a great step in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, I'm super, super excited for it.
Oh yeah.
There are some other small tweaks as well that we could take time, but Rachel will send out an email this week, I think, with lots of the features that have gone out. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Those come from you, Ryan.
I mean, yes, I said Wilson, not Wilson.
Oops. I guess you guys know who really writes them most weeks.
That's exciting. So student asked, and we get this question a lot, is have we thought about a quote unquote mapped app? So when someone asks that, it's literally go into the iOS app store and download Mapped from there. And we have thought about it. Obviously, the world lives on their mobile devices at this point. And we have decided, at least for the foreseeable future, not to pursue that for many reasons. Number one, we don't think it adds anything, right? The app doesn't add any features that we can't do now. And really the biggest reason is it would double or triple our development costs. Developing a mobile app for Android, for iOS, is a constant battle because, as you know, iPhones update every year and iOS's update every year. All phones are updating all the time, and Android is like no joke. There's like 300 different versions of an Android phone, and we're well into six figures in development costs for a map at this point, and it would double or triple those costs. And we wanted to make sure that we could make something useful for everyone. So in the future, if we find a reason to do it, we will do it, but nothing as of now. But what's nice is now with the mobile responsiveness, you can, on an iOS device at least, and I know you can do this on Android as well, but I have an iPhone, is I can go to the website, and now I can go to the share screen and click add to home screen. And now I have a quote unquote mapped app right there that I can click on.
Yep.
So,
yeah. What we're trying to do with most things, but in this particular instance, is give you the highest quality experience we can at the lowest possible price. Yep. And mobile responsiveness, we hope, gets the job done without us having to pass any costs of development onto you for the app.
Exactly.
Cool.
Well, very exciting. Ready for some questions?
Yeah. We had a few come in a day or two early. I always like to address those first so that they don't get lost in the thicket. So those are in the private chat if you want to read them, Ryan.
Yeah, I got the first one here. I finished my BSc in medical laboratory sciences at a 4-year university while in the military. My degree did not cover the core prereqs, biochem, physics, orgo, for a medical school. Will completing these prereqs at a community college post-bacc be seen negatively by AdComs? I would have to pay out of pocket. So a little bit of a twist to the standard is community college bad question, right? This is someone who was in the military, did their degree, and is now looking at doing their prereqs, almost like a career changer, but just because they didn't take the core prereqs somewhere else, they're looking for the cheapest option because they're paying out of pocket. And how bad will that be?
Yeah, I think this is a good question, and unfortunately, there's not enough information here to really answer it adequately. The questioner does not indicate how well they did in the Med Sciences program, so it's a little bit difficult to know, to be able to say for sure. But I think that I'll say that, assuming that the student did well in the Med Lab Sciences program while in the military, then well being, let's say 3.5 or better. And then I think that going to community college to do the prereqs is not going to be seen necessarily as negative. And I think the MCAT score is going to affect this as well. And so the three things together, how they did in the Med Lab Sciences program, how well they do at the community college, and what that MCAT score looks like, are going to work together in this kind of a case. And so I would say, assuming that they did well in their undergrad, then I would not think that community college work will disadvantage them necessarily. But like I said, it's a little bit difficult to judge based on the information that we have here.
Yeah, I think it's so important. You and I historically go to the context of what is the bigger picture.
Right.
It's not just as simple as, is community college good or bad? It's what is the big picture. Right. Are you hopping back and forth between your 4-year university and a community college because you keep failing the 4-year university class, and then you go to community college and take it? Are you, whatever the situation is for why you are at the community college, right? It's not the what, it's the so what. Why are you there? And if you're not needing to, quote unquote, prove your academic readiness, then it's probably not going to hurt you. And so, I think it's always an important conversation. The context matters, right? We talk about it all the time with GPA. Like, okay, you have a 3.4, that's the what? Well, so what? What does that look like? Did you bomb your first 2 years and you crushed your last 2 years? That trend is really important, and nobody talks about that.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly right.
Next question here is, how do I decide if I'm ready to apply or if I should wait? We have an Am I Ready series for that.
Oh, I know, right?
I am a junior and have over 7,000 hours of clinical experience working and volunteering as an EMT. I also work as an electromyography technician and have multiple leadership positions. However, I struggled my freshman and sophomore year of undergrad due to personal circumstances. Maybe working too much. That's a lot of hours. Junior year has been going much better. Great. I'm taking courses I love and I feel much more confident. I'm planning to take the MCAT in the spring. Should I wait to apply so my GPA trend improves?
Yeah.
It's funny. I was actually talking about this. Where was I talking about? I was talking about this with someone earlier, and I don't remember who I was talking to, but the crux of the conversation that I had, and it's making me mad that I don't remember who I was talking to. It was literally today. That's how bad my memory is. If you need those classes to prove your academic capability, then you probably shouldn't be applying. Like this student is really a junior, so they're probably asking normal time frame application going into senior year, but they're probably going to need their senior year courses to prove their academic capability, to continue their upward trend, and to really hopefully show they've turned it around from their freshman and sophomore years.
Right.
So this is, in my mind, an easy answer of, if you need, quote unquote, need those classes, you probably should wait to apply. A lot of students will make the mistake of applying with the assumption that they will send an update to the schools with their new GPA from that semester. And it doesn't work that way. A lot of schools are going to not care about your updates, and it's just whatever you've entered is what you've entered.
Yeah.
And sorry, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. I think, while, some schools may have a robust system of evaluating updates, I think that most schools, it's going to be lost on them. And you're exactly right. Whatever is in there that you inputted initially, that's what they're going to be seeing, and that's what they're going to use to evaluate you as a candidate. And so I think, my feeling is that this particular student needs to really consider the importance of having that senior year under their belt before they apply. Yeah. And so I would consider this a prime candidate for maybe a gap year in order for that to happen, so that the medical schools get the full impact of that trend, as you were indicating, Ryan. So yeah. I agree with you completely, and I think this sounds like a good gap year student to me.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Just logically thinking about it, just the nuts and bolts of how this whole process works is students submit their applications to the application service. The application services do all of their work behind the scenes, verifying the transcripts, verifying each of those courses, and then sending that data to the schools. And TMDSAS is a little bit different. They send the data and then verify a little bit later. But all of that verification is happening. And then if you are like, well, why won't they accept an update? Well, just think about the thousands of students applying to each of the schools, then sending some random formatted email or image of a transcript to each of the schools. Like, they can't get that information into their systems easily and verified, and to be able to change your GPA. Like, it's too much of a operational nightmare to be able to do that. And TMDSAS is awesome. You guys have your own separate system to do that, built into the application service. But for other schools, it's impossible. And so you really want to wait until you have those grades under your belt if you're relying on them to prove academic readiness.
Yep, agree completely.
Rachel?
Let's see. So we can go to live comments now. The only thing I wanted to chime in on that is that person, whoever asked that, didn't give us any specifics. So, that's fine. She may know, or he may know. They may know. I should just say they. They may know. But every once in a while, you stumble across that person who's like, well, I dipped to a 3.67. Yes. That's really bad, right? So please reality check what you think are bad numbers with someone who respects you more than they love you. Yes. And then everything Ryan and Scott said.
Yes, absolutely.
How important is shadowing if I have over 2,000 hours of clinical work? This is a very common question. I have tons of clinical. Do I need shadowing? Or I have tons of shadowing. Do I need clinical? Right. Scott, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think, again, as with anything, there are nuances to this question. And my feeling is that I think some shadowing is always beneficial, particularly depending on where all this clinical work is. So a good example would be, let's say you're doing a lot of clinical work in an inpatient setting, and in a hospital or long-term care facility, or something like that, and but you have no experience in the private sector with private offices or a variety of different types of fields of medicine. So I think shadowing, what shadowing does is broadens that. It says to the admissions committee, this person knows what medicine is in a variety of settings with a variety of caregivers, and they really get it. They get what the the broadness of medicine in the United States looks like and is all about. Same thing with shadowing. I think that, you got a ton of shadowing. Maybe shadowing, you're just kind of standing there watching. Clinical, you're more involved with what's going on in the setting. And so I think that in this particular case, I think it's possible that shadowing would be beneficial, depending on where this clinical work was and what kind of exposure you had and stuff like that. So I'd say, it really kind of depends.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And really just understanding, these are two different things.
Yep.
Shadowing on the application is listed separately than clinical experience. You're gaining different thoughts and ideas from each experience. And so one does not outweigh the other. And there are caveats, as you mentioned, right? Scribing is one of those things where it's considered a clinical experience, but most schools know that a lot of scribing is basically shadowing, but you're doing work too.
Yep.
And so they'll give you the benefit of the doubt if you don't have a lot of shadowing, but you have a lot of scribing, that they're like, well, this basically counts, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But obviously we can't sign off on that for every school. Every school is going to be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
All right. Dr. Gray, I have read your personal statement playbook, but I am still struggling on identifying one specific seed. Any advice? I've had the family health scares, the personal illnesses, the exposure to healthcare through family, but not sure what exactly planted the seed for myself. So this is funny. I did a workshop on this recently, really about your story and finding your seed. And during the workshop, we did a little bit of an exercise to find the seed. And it really comes down to, when was that first time where you were like, like this might be interesting. This might be cool. I think I might want to check this out. I think a lot of students think the way that I talk about the seed is that, like, hits you in the head, knocks you out, like, oh my gosh, I have to be a physician. And it's just, that's not it. It's when was the first time where you were like, wow, this is really cool. This might be something I'm interested in. And it's confusing because a lot of students who may be coming from other healthcare fields, whether nursing, PA, veterinary medicine. I've worked with some students who were interested in vet medicine first. Their seed are those things.
Yeah.
Their seed is, why were you interested in vet medicine? And then you're going to have to tell the story about what's bringing you towards human medicine. And so it really is your specific journey. And yes, obviously, the far majority of us are going to have multiple healthcare experiences, but there's only one time where you were first thinking, wow, this might be cool. This might be interesting. I think I might want to do that. And maybe it was a really long time ago and you don't remember, but try and ask your family and, like, hey, Mom, when did I first start talking about wanting to be a physician? And let that bring out your memories and thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes it requires some investigative effort with, mom and or dad or grandma or grandpa or, aunt or uncle who was a doctor or, whatever. I think it takes a little sleuthing sometimes to sort of figure that out and get a good sense of, where did this ever start? Where was the initial impulse? And I have so many stories. I've heard so many stories of students who said, I remember as a 5-year-old dissecting a frog on the pavement outside my house, and
that's called
and it was
animal cruelty.
I was fascinated with blah, 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 whatever. Or being fascinated with the human body. I remember back in the day when I was a kid, we had encyclopedias, the actual books.
Yeah.
And under anatomy in the A book, they had these little pages with layover screen kind of things that you would lay over each other, that you could sort of see through portions of it, that you would lay over things. And it was the anatomy of the body. And it had the the muscular system and the skeletal system, and you would just lay over each other. And I've had many times where students said that was the seed for me. I was fascinated with looking at the encyclopedia and all the little parts of the body and how it fit together and everything. And so I think it takes some of that effort, because often you may not remember those things until you begin to uncover them with people that were important in your life. And I suppose there's some people that could be out there where that becomes a real struggle to find where that seed is. And so I think my feeling is sometimes that sometimes you have to accept that you may not be able to find or remember, or people in your life may not really ever get to where's that definite seed. It was just always, well, you just always talked about it, and that was just something that you always said. But I think it's important to recognize and to admit that creating meaning for yourself in this process of examining where is this seed and where does this come from and where was this initial impulse, that even going through that process can be incredibly meaningful to you, and allow you to sort of put together the story as it unfolds in front of you. So enjoy that part of it. Don't lament, oh, I don't remember where the seed is, but enjoy the uncovering of all this stuff and figuring that process out. Let it be exciting to you to do that.
Yeah.
So while we're still on the personal comments essay, let's take this one.
How important is it to stick to a certain format when writing your personal statement? Not referring to actual content or story, but the intro, body, outro, outline. To clarify, could you, quote, play around with the format and start out writing the personal statement like a narrative or, quote, book to convey your story, perhaps signaling one's educational background in literature, if that makes sense? So, I've seen some of these.
Yeah, I have too. And, I would say, I think that a student has to be comfortable in their own skin, and then comfortable with how they're going to translate that into a narrative. And I see a lot of students have seen a lot of students over the years who have, using the words of this questionnaire, played around with, a variety of different ways of doing that. And I don't think that there's a right way or a wrong way necessarily. I guess there are some wrong ways, but there's not necessarily just a one right way. I think that you want it. However, I would hasten to add that I think you don't want to be too creative. I've seen some personal statements where the telling of the story gets in the way of the meaning, and it becomes difficult to sort of figure out what are they doing here. And you have to recognize that, at least at some level, particularly early on in the process, reviewers are looking at these things quickly. They're scanning. They're really evaluating in a fairly routine, quick kind of way. What does this look like? What's going on here? What does this personal statement say? And then they go from there. So if it gets too convoluted or too much of a creative thing, I saw one time. This is no joke. It was a poem. It was like a 3,000 word poem, and not a haiku, thank God. But it was a little over the top,
yeah.
and it became very difficult to get a sense of what they were talking about, and what they were trying to do, and it was just way over the top. And so I think you don't want to be too creative, but I think some creativity can be good, but it has to fit with not only your personality and your story, but you have to keep in mind that you are writing this to someone who doesn't know you, who's never met you, who is trying to understand your story. So if the telling of the story gets in the way of the story, that's a problem.
Who's trying to understand your story in a relatively short amount of time.
Correct.
Yeah. I think that's a key part of it. I think I think a lot of students try to be different just to be different, and they hear me talk about, or they read my book and go, well, if this book sells 1,000 copies, then 1,000 students are going to all write the same way. Even though I don't specifically tell you one way to write the personal statement, and they go, well, I'm going to do the opposite because everyone else is doing this one thing, and that's where students kind of go off the rails, right? There's a reason it's popular. There's a reason I talk about what I talk about in the book because of what resonates with people. A poem, obviously, I think a little bit over the top. I think there are some potential opportunities specifically for this student and how they're asking the question. The signaling one's educational background in literature, they may be able to incorporate some of those kind of styles and techniques in their personal statement that may work really well. And my response to that is try it and get some feedback and see what that feedback is. And don't be married to the idea, because the feedback is going to be important to decide on what you do, and get feedback from people. Rachel, what was the thing you said earlier? Like people who like love you, but what was that?
What I like to say is get your essay feedback from people who respect you more than they love you.
Nice. Yes.
And by the way, I do have to give credit for any of you who remember from college admissions, Paul Canarak. I'm pretty sure he's the one who taught me that phrase. So
that's
any of our pre-meds who are like, oh yeah, I did SAT with that guy. He's the one who taught me that. But yeah, you just, mom and dad are going to be biased, and mom and dad are not pre-med experts.
Yes.
Correct.
And even if they're physicians, it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
And even older sibling, again, they know what got them in, right? But an advisor at school is a good person to ask, because they know you, but they're interested in helping you get in. They're not as worried about hurting your feelings. And hopefully everyone gives feedback in a constructive way. But
I want to expand just one other second on this one, and the kind of language that this person used, signaling one's educational background in literature. I always hesitate to make sure that you're pushing your agenda in your application to say, hey, look at me, I have an educational background in literature. At the end of the day, I don't really care about that. I still want to know who you are, and I'm going to see that you have an educational background in literature throughout the rest of your application. Don't push that narrative because you think it's going to make you stand out or be different. Right? There are plenty of other students who are out there applying with various other random degrees and backgrounds and educations. So don't think that is the thing that's going to help you stand out. If you want to use some of those skills and techniques in your personal statement, great, but don't do it just so you can stand out and make it known that you have this background.
Yeah. If you do it too far, if you go too far with it, you're going to be standing out. You're going to be standing out in the cold.
Yeah. Okay. So this is interesting because you guys used the same phrase either last week or maybe the week before about pushing your own agenda, like in terms of the applicant. Yeah. And I think in that case, it was one of our mapped members who has children and was asking like, when is the right time? And you guys were like, well, maybe never. Yeah. I mean, AMCAS does ask you to declare dependence. So there. But like, I think she or he, they were specifically asking, like, is it in my personal statement? Is it in a secondary? Is it in the interview? And maybe any of those, maybe none of those. Yeah. Right. But so when you say push personal agenda, I guess like that's not always clear to me. So I wonder if it's clear to all of our listeners too. Like, what's the risk there? Like, what is it like? You're worried that they're presenting a story about themselves that isn't relevant to medicine?
When I say that, I am generally coming from a place of stop trying to sell yourself, stop trying to stand out, stop trying to tell me what you think is important. And just tell your story, answer the question in the secondaries, answer the question in the interview. Right. Too many students go off on a tangent and they'll hear a question or they'll read a question and they go, oh, this is the perfect time to tell them that I was the captain of the volleyball team and how I know that that medicine is a team sport, and because of my experience in the volleyball, like it's just like don't like stop pushing your agenda.
Trying
That's
too
where
hard.
I go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Let's see. Here's a good one.
Does clinical experience in another country count? For example, a summer internship abroad.
Yeah. So this is a good question. I in fact, I was earlier today. I had a Zoom session with a student, and he was struggling to find, even before COVID, struggling to find some clinical work. He's an international student from China. And he ended up going back to China and doing quite a bit of clinical activities in an international hospital in China, and readily admitted that it was very different than what he assumed medicine in the United States was like. He's got a little bit of experience in medicine in the United States. And so I think the key here is recognizing that different healthcare systems are indeed different. And what you have to know is that, the vast majority, 99% of students that go to American medical schools are going to practice in the United States. And so having experience in the American healthcare system, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything about it is gonna be expected. And if your only experience is shadowing or some clinical activities in another country, then that introduces you to what it's like in that country. It doesn't say anything about what it's like in the United States. What is the life of a physician like? Particularly depending on the healthcare system. If it's a socialized system, it's going to be vastly different in terms of what the physician is going to be doing and facing in their daily life, as opposed to here in the United States with a multiple payer system and all that's involved with that. So I definitely think that will not suffice. It does count, and it's fascinating, and it's going to depend a little bit on you to sort of fill in the blanks about what you gain from that, the so what part of that experience and what it meant to you. But I don't think it's going to be the end all and beat all of what you're going to be expected to be doing in terms of understanding what healthcare in the United States is about.
Yeah, I agree. I'm currently in the low stats, decent ECs category, sub 3.0 cumulative GPA and science GPA. There's an upward trend in my senior year. Currently thinking of doing a postbac as well as the MedSci program at UNTHSC. Thoughts on the program and how I should start to reinvent myself?
Yeah, this is a good question. So this is essentially a Texas question. For those of you that don't know, HSC is the University of North Texas Health Science Center in Fort Worth. It is a osteopathic medical school, and they have also a special master's program where they largely it's for GPA correction, but it can be used in a few other ways as well. And I think that this program in Texas is pretty widely understood and known of in the Texas, among Texas medical schools and the people that are involved in the process of medical education in Texas. Outside of Texas, I don't know how well known it is, particularly outside of the osteopathic world. So I would say it's if your plan is to go to medical school in Texas, then I would say it's a good opportunity. It's a large program. There's probably, I want to say 250 students in the program, maybe 300. So it's a large program. They do a great job. I've spoken at their program many times, and I feel really good about it. They take a lot of their classes with first and second year medical students at the Health Science Center there, and so I would say it's a good opportunity to, as you put it, reinvent yourself, and I think that it's really all going to be about how well you do in the process and in that program. and assuming that you do well, and well, if you've got a sub 3.0 GPA and science GPA, then you don't have a whole lot of room for you don't have a whole lot of wiggle room.
Yeah.
You gotta really blast it out the top, and the MCAT score will be important to corroborate that in the process, and they're gonna help you in that. The other thing that's nice about these special master's programs like this UNT program is that they have a lot of things that they do to help you craft your application, put together a good package. And so it can be a real benefit, I think. So I'd say go for it, depending on kind of the nuances of your particular story. But I think the med science program at UNT is a good strong program. Now, that is opposed to doing an undergraduate post-bacc program. There are a variety of sort of unstructured programs in Texas. There's really not a structured post-bacc program in the state that is structured in the way that a lot of schools are doing it, in where a cohort system, and you're coming in and you're doing X, Y, and Z along with others. There's really not one of those. Most students, when they're really wanting to apply into Texas schools, they're doing a lot of effort to in the do-it-yourself kind of category. There are a couple of programs that are unstructured where you work with an advisor to sort of put together a package that's going to get you, depending on your background, where you want to go and address the needs that you have, whether you're a second career or or a GPA renovator or whatever.
Yeah. And just for clarification, if someone is listening to what you just said and was like, wait a minute, I'm confused. So UNTHSC is the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine, or Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine is at UNTHSC. But TCU also partnered with UNTHSC for an MD school. So that area has two medical schools now, allopathic and osteopathic.
That's exactly right.
And that TCU one is 3 years old now at this point, I think.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Put this one.
Well, my friends, for our regular listeners, this is the time in the show where somebody wants to know what happens when they didn't get any clinical experience this year because of COVID. And even though we get asked it every week, I get emailed about 20 more. So you might give an abbreviated version, but I'm going to go ahead and have you answer.
Nice. I am missing clinical experience. The hours I have are from being a caregiver to my mother for years and still to this day. I was going to start before COVID and it was canceled. I'm actively searching for another opportunity and plan to become an EKG tech during my gap year. Will this be too late for this upcoming app cycle?
Short answer, I think probably. Probably be. I mean, basically, if you don't have much outside of caring for your mom, if you don't have a lot of clinical experience, and I'll hasten to add, I'm not minimizing the care that you're giving to your mother and the importance of that, and how instrumental that process can be. It's a little bit different, though, and I think it's going to be seen as a little bit different by most admissions committees.
Yep.
And so what I would say is, really what you want to do is examine, really you have basically 4 or 5 months to get something going. If you're able to become a EKG tech, then I would say maybe you want to wait a year and get a lot of that under your belt and then apply, because I'm a little worried about the lack of clinical experience. And, I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of big question marks here with COVID and stuff, but I think if you don't have any clinical experience outside of caring for a family member, I'm a little concerned about that.
Yeah, and remember, we don't tell you this because you need a certain number of hours before you should think about applying. You need to have this experience so that you understand what the heck you're getting yourself into. And taking care of your mom, while obviously very important and very impactful, doesn't tell you that you're going to like being a physician, that you're going to like taking care of other people's moms. And so it's very important to have that experience under your belt so that you can talk about it, so you know for yourself for sure that this is what you want to do and go through. Yeah. It's funny that this question came kind of on the back of us talking about this TCU UNTHSC school, because I had a student a couple of years ago who was in their first class, so she's second year, third year at this point. She was a reapplicant to medical school because their first time applying, all she had was caregiver for a family member, and it just wasn't good enough. And she didn't change much other than she got much better experience and was able to write about those things differently in her application and talk about them differently in her application, that she was successful the second time around.
Yeah, exactly.
I graduated with a chemical engineering bachelor's degree with a 3.18 GPA after doing a 5th year at my university. Since graduating, I've completed 25 semester science units at a community college and bumped it to a 3.3. I have a steady upward trend since spring 17-18. Is this damage control enough, or should I consider something more formal? Do admissions committees give a little more leeway to engineering majors? I want to throw this one under like this whole pre-med myth. Like, you're a biomedical engineer, your 3.5 is like a 3.7, and med schools do that calculation.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Scott's the one who needs to answer this, but I will say I think engineering is a special question because many engineering programs, all exams are curved and most of the people in the room are getting C's. Right? Like, there's very few B's, there's very few A's, there's very few D's, there's very few F's. Like, it's a true bell curve. And I think, I mean, I don't know if that applies to this person, but I've seen that with a lot of engineering programs. So I just want to throw out that it might be a 3.3 from an engineer at a school like that means like, man, they were killing it and people in their class hated them.
Right. Right.
So there is that possibility.
Well, I think I would see this as the same thing related to a student that asks a question about, should I go to X university that is really hard and has a reputation for being, tough and blah, 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 whatever, or should I go to X other school that I think I might could do better at because it's not as difficult?
Even inside the same university, should I take this professor who's known to be easy, or that professor who's known to be hard?
Yeah, exactly. And so these all fit in the same category of question, I think. And so I do think that medical school admissions committees recognize that not all majors are the same. That some majors are inherently more difficult than other majors, and some have different grading scales. Depending on sort of the realities of that major or the realities of that particular institution, or a particular professor who's just known as a difficult grader or whatever. And so to the point of this questioner, I think that I don't think you can ride on the fact that you're an engineering major and that, somehow the 3.1 is going to, or the 3.18 is going to make it all okay. I think that a little bit of it is going to depend on the MCAT score. If you hit the ball out of the ballpark in terms of MCAT, then I think admissions committee might be able to say, okay, well, the combination of a engineering major, a difficult, really tough major, and I agree with you, Rachel, that on most campuses, engineering majors are the toughest majors. Not all campuses, but I think they're really well known for being extra hard on grading and difficult. You don't have a whole lot of wiggle room in terms of electives and stuff. They're packed full. The curriculum is packed full, and et cetera. So really, what I would say to this questioner is, there's a little tiny bit of leeway given for some majors and some universities and stuff. There's no alteration to the GPA in some sort of formulaic way based on what school you went to or what major you had or whatever. That does not occur. I've never heard that anywhere, that there's any kind of sort of systematic, alteration of the GPA based on other external or internal factors or whatever. So really, I think that this particular student, I think the MCAT's going to be pretty important. I think having done the science units at a community college is going to be a little bit tough, because what an admissions committee won't know is, okay, you were performing at the 3.2 level at X university in a tough major, and I can guarantee you that med school is going to be tougher than your engineering major. It's going to be more. It's going to be more information. It's going to be coming at you a lot faster. It's going to be, and so that in and of itself is not going to hold any water with an admissions committee. Yeah. And so what I think you have to do is I would recommend in this particular case that you need to match the community college work that you've done with some upper level biological sciences courses at a 4-year institution that will say to the admissions committee, the community college work that I've done is real. And I'm performing now in upper level biological sciences coursework at a 4-year university that matches with what I did at the community college level. I'm also providing you with an MCAT score that says I have a high level of ability to take this information that I've learned and utilize it in a way that's going to be effective. And I've got all the critical thinking stuff, et cetera. So, I think that just saying, well, I was an engineering major is not going to fly.
Yeah. I agree.
All right. We probably got time for one more. I think this will be our last.
Okay. I've been a leader of my pre-med org for my 4th year now, currently the president and looking to continue for a 5th year, as I really enjoy mentoring pre-meds on the right journey. Granted, my own GPA has took a hit, thus having to spend extra years to recover academically through the postbac/masters. I sometimes worry if I enjoy it too much and med schools will question my dedication to medicine. I hope to one day be in charge of a residency program to help prevent physician burnout, etc. So, this is kind of a multiple part question.
Yeah.
really not. The question comes down to, and I've seen this a lot from students who feel guilty that they're not full steam ahead with, I should get through undergrad as fast as possible and get to medical school, or else medical schools will question my dedication to this. And all I lean back on is, well, what's your story? What's your story?
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the first thing that struck me, there's a little bit of irony here in this question, because what the question says is, looking forward to continuing this in the 5th year. I really enjoy mentoring pre-meds on the right journey. And then it goes on to say, basically, I took the wrong journey or a different journey. Mm-hmm. And that struggled with academically, in part, I'm assuming, because of the level of commitment that they had to this student organization. And so, I think anytime that there is a problem with academics, then there has to be a deep re-examination of, what am I doing? Where am I spending my time? What are the priorities here? And getting it right. Now, what I would say is this may be leading you as an individual down an entirely different road. I think you need to examine that. If you're really into mentoring and you like the idea of preventing physician burnout, as you say, maybe you need to focus more on preventing pre-med burnout than physician burnout. There could be a lot of things there's a lot of directions that you could go in a journey. Now, assuming that you want to go definitely or committed to the idea of going to medical school and all that, then I definitely think a post-bacc program or a special master's program is going to be necessary for this. But I do think there's a very significant level of self-examination necessary for this questioner to say, why was I not able to balance the two, and what is going to stop me? Because, medical schools have student organizations too. And am I going to get right back into the exact same situation in medical school because I get overcommitted to a student organization or some effort that is a good thing, and there are beneficial things playing out here, but the wheels fall off academically?
Yep.
So,
yeah, it's and that's why I always talk about one of the biggest mistakes that new college students make is taking on too much, not adjusting to being a good college student first, and needing to dig themselves out of this GPA hole. And so I'm glad that you found a passion mentoring other people. I'm not as worried about what it looks like to schools. If this is your passion and that's what you want, great. Talk about that, lean on that, but don't think it's going to hinder you from getting into school, because they're going to be like, well, you should go be a teacher instead or whatever.
Yeah. No, and I, what I think here is that, based on what the questioner has said, sounds like they're maybe a really good candidate for being in academic medicine. I mean, that's what academic medicine is all about, is mentoring and teaching and helping students along the way and stuff like that. So, you may want to really examine academic medicine as a career if you're really into teaching and mentoring.
Yep. Well, folks, I think that is the end of our 2020 Ask the Dean
Hard to believe.
That's what I was going to say. No Ask the Dean on, for our live folks, December 28th.
Yep.
Our YouTube folks are watching this weeks later anyway.